The biggest faction in Fortnite's storyline is without a doubt the Last Reality, and they're coming back strong. This time they may bring the Cube Queen, the Herald, and the Nothing itself. But how did we get here, and where did it all go wrong? The story begins in Chapter 1, Season 4, when an alien visitor arrives to the island in a rapidly approaching meteor. At the heart of this meteor sits the visitor. The visitor is a member of the Seven, taking a quick visit to the Fortnite island, but not long after he has to make an escape, and he does this by opening a sideways rift in the sky. A sideways rift is a portal that connects two distinct realities, and the easy part is it can be opened without using the 0 point at all, which is an important thing for later on. The visitor leaves the Fortnite island through this sideways rift, and it begins to destabilize time and reality itself. New worlds are being brought onto the Fortnite island every day, and people from our own Earth are being teleported into the game. The most important person who this happened to is named Drift, and whilst Drift is finding his way around the island, him and his new friends come across Kevin the Cube. Kevin the Cube is the very first of many Last Reality cubes that we will later meet in the Fortnite storyline, and he arrived to the island through the sideways rift that the visitor opened in the previous season. Now the important thing to note here is that the Last Reality didn't actually open this portal to send the cube through by themselves. It had already been previously created by the visitor, and you'll have to keep watching to find out exactly why, but for now, let's look at what the cube is getting up to on the island. After arriving in game, Kevin the Cube begins to roll around the different biomes of the map, corrupting small zones on the island with runes that glow with purple dark energy. After traveling around the entire island, imprinting rune after rune, Kevin makes his way to the middle of the map, where he cannonballs full force into Loot Lake and turns the entire thing purple. But how did that happen? Well, the cubes, as well as a few other beings of the Last Reality such as the Chrome, seem to be able to choose when they want to dissolve into the water they go in, and also when they just want to travel straight through it. This is quite interesting, but I'm not entirely sure what purpose it serves. I do, however, know why Kevin most likely went into Loot Lake, because under the lake sat the 0 point, which is the source of all creation and an orb of unstoppable power, but the cube didn't stay near it for long. Just a few days after dissolving into the lake, it rose to life again in Chapter 1, Season 6. At the center of the island, the cube was now floating in a tornado in the sky with an entire island on top. I know it's a lot to process, but we don't have much time, because it's already started moving around the island once again. Kevin makes his way back to the runes that he's previously placed around the map, and now that they've had their time to power up, he begins to siphon them for even more dark energy to bring power and dominance over the entire island. As the hype builds, the final rune's energy is extracted, and the cube makes its way to the island center yet again, but this time the plan is slightly different. Instead of just dissolving straight into the lake, the cube's energy slowly drips into a whirlpool at the middle of the lake. When everything is ready, Kevin explodes. Now what happens next might surprise you, as most people thought the island was going to be completely wrecked, but it was actually quite the opposite. The world that we saw now was entirely different. Our screens were bright, beautiful, with butterflies of creation energy from the 0 point, and it was all really confusing but amazing to see. We returned to the island from this unique realm of rifts and harmony, and the game greeted us with a rainbow and shards of the cube that were now dormant. It seemed that for the meantime we had actually won, and the cube wasn't going to return, at least not for a long while. But let's skip ahead to Chapter 2, Season 5, where the iconic 0 point is now fully exposed and reality is faced with its possible ultimate destruction. But that's not to worry. Agent Jones is here to help, and it's nice to have a familiar face around the island, because everyone knows this guy. How could you not? In this season's story, his role is to gather hunters that will protect the 0 point from being exploited, and he's been told to do this by the Imagined Order, which is fine, but they're making him do all this hard work, and meanwhile they're not even holding up their side of the deal. When Jones realizes how he has been totally used by IO, he rebels against his organization, and he attempts to contact the Seven for help. His plan works perfectly, and the Foundation, who is the leader of the Seven and also the Rock for some reason, comes to the island and helps Jones to stop the 0 point from exploding, and he does this by trapping himself inside of it and containing its energy by summoning a dark tower of chromium around it. This tower is called the Spire. The Spire is a defense mechanism of the 0 point, and although it is strong and so helpful, it's also a hardened version of the Last Reality's Chrome, so it still has some of the dark energy, but that might be why it works so well. When the 0 point is out of control with its creation energy, the Spire brings balance with dark energy of destruction, and it sounds really bad, but it also can be dealt with. The Imagined Order has a sub-faction of their organization called the Spire Cult, and I believe that the Foundation used to be a member of this faction, as he can summon the Spire, and we know he used to work in the Imagined Order in some faction. So this would be a very interesting addition for his character, but let me know what you think of it in the comments. The Spire Cult's main purpose is to make sure that no one abuses the dark energy that remains in the Spire Tower. So they're basically preventing disaster from even happening, which they didn't do a very good job at. A man named Raz, who was called by this dark Spire ever since he was a child, manages to get a hold of its power, and he brings the attention of the Last Reality's army straight back to the Fortnite island. Great, just when I thought we were getting to a peaceful point. Now there's a massive mothership in the sky, and the cubes aren't even the worst enemy that we're facing, because the aliens are here too. They begin to abduct many of the island's most iconic locations, just like Coral Castle, which we all know and love, am I right? When it gets to the final abduction, we team up with Dr. Sloan from the Imagined Order to trick the mothership into picking up the bombs in their abduction. These bombs are then detonated inside of the alien ship, but the aircraft was carrying cubes as well, so now they're scattered all over the island. Like, damn it, does this story ever get somewhat happy? Well, that answer's a no, because now the cubes want to start a war, and they've even brought their whole master with them too, who is the Cube Queen. The cubes do their thing, you know, they roll around, they multiply, if you know what I mean, and they all commence at the middle of the island once again. But this time it's not to dissolve into the water or to explode on an island, but rather it's to build a pyramid. What the The pyramid builds its energy up, and the Cube Queen sits at the top of this structure in an orb of yellow energy, very similarly to what the Ice King did in his orb, and that was just before he released a ton of zombies onto the map, and now you see what's going on here. The end of chapter 2 takes place, and the Last Reality's army is let loose onto the island through a crack in the sky, but it's not a normal rift just like the past, because it still seems like the Last Reality can't even open those. The Cube Queen's army continues to fight, and it seems like the only option left is to flip the entire island on top of them. I mean, yeah, that sounds cool, but I doubt she'll just be killed by water. Okay, well, whether she's dead or not, the Last Reality have been silenced yet again, and we have a whole new side of the island to explore. How cool is that? And yep, never mind, there's a war now. After many years, the Seven and the Imagined Order finally settle their conflict, and this is also coincidentally perfect for the Last Reality, because the Imagined Order were really good at keeping them away, so let's just hope that they don't lose this war and get crushed by the hand of a robot or oh my god. So the Imagined Order are defeated, and the Herald of the Nothing makes her way to the island with the chrome, which just like the cubes, spread across the island to corrupt everything. So we understand what's happening here. Now, does that mean we'll actually be prepared this time and come up with a decent logical plan? Well, no, of course not. Are you not used to this story by now? See, I say that, but in this upcoming event, we don't win in the last minute, or we don't crush our enemy under the hand of a mech. We literally just watch the world explode and go, oh, yeah, so she's pretty powerful. After all of this goes down, we manage to reforge the island with new realities, and I gotta say, this is actually a really cool way of bringing us to a new map. The event, it sucked though, like don't get me wrong there, it was awful. But the Last Reality isn't even going to stop at that point, not even after an awful event like Fracture. Chapter 4 of Fortnite introduces us to the Shapeless Man, who is very likely to be the Nothing, and he is the source of the Last Reality's powers, like chrome, cubes, and darkness, as well as being the one responsible for gathering the army. His job in this season is to get into the head of the Rift Warden Stellan. Stellan is a character in Chapter 4 who was brought to the island to rebuild the Imagined Order with a snapshot of Geno. Even though the Imagined Order aren't really good or heroes in the overall story, they do a pretty good job at stopping the Last Reality, so the 0 Point wants them back on the island. The Nothing pressures the Rift Warden to build a Rift Gate as a portal to the Last Reality. A mysterious saboteur then goes ahead and changes the Rift Gate's location to go to Mega City, which is the home of the Fox clan, but who exactly are they? Well, that's the clan of that dude we met at the start of this video named Drift, and it's really cool to see that this narrative ties together all these years later, and let's pray that Drift can save us because things are not looking good. As the weeks pass, the story is building up to a point where the Last Reality have just destroyed our last world, and they're really not afraid to do it all again. So chapter 5 next season, maybe? Now let's not go that far, but hopefully their return will be just as cool as it's anticipated to be. I mean, I'm confident they're an awesome faction that hype up the story every time they're here, and it's so awesome to see. So if you want to follow everything that's going on with them and everything else, subscribing to this channel will be your best chance at keeping up to date with Fortnite theories and storyline news, and I think you might just want to watch this video here.